everybody, I'm Elysia Buss, the host of Horsepower Empowerment Through Connection, and today we have the great honor and pleasure of getting to talk to my friend Kalvin Evans. Kalvin is in Hotchkiss, Colorado, but he has actually been all over the place because he was originally born in Germany, which is really an interesting story. But now he is in Colorado, and he is one of the incredible men that is going to be on our men's summit, our global men's summit on November 13th through the 15th. So Kalvin, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Elysia, it's my pleasure and an honor to be on this with you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to interview with you.
You're very welcome, my friend. And so Kalvin, so you are in the, you're a veteran of the Air Force.
Yes.
Right? And then your dad was in the Army.
Yes.
And then your grandpa on your mom's side was also in the Army. So it's like being in the military is like in your blood.
It is definitely in my blood. In fact, I didn't think it was going to be an opportunity for me until high school. And I'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay, yeah. Let's take it back to the beginning. So you were telling me about your dad and how he flew your mom to Germany. Let's start at the beginning.
So my dad was in the Vietnam War, and he was stationed in Frankfurt, Germany. And my mom at the time was living in San Antonio, Texas, and he flew my mother out to Germany to spend time with him. And that was when she was pregnant with me, and I wound up being born in Germany at the hospital there in Landstuhl. So it's interesting looking at my birth certificate because I had to have it actually signed by Henry Kissinger stating that I am an American citizen and I was born on an American base. So for me. And I've always wanted to find out, could I have dual citizenship? Could I go back and apply for citizenship with Germany? I don't know. I haven't checked it out, but I'll wind up figuring that out sometime soon.
Yeah, no, that would be really cool. And then how long were you there before you moved back to the U.S.?
Well, after I was born, I was there for 6 months, and then we moved back to the United States, and then I grew up in San Antonio, and then my dad wound up relocating to North Carolina for a little bit. That was when I was 4 years old, and then my second brother was born at that time. And funny story, I have to share this. I'm an adventurous kind of young man, so at that time I was watching Jacques Cousteau, and I wanted to be a diver. And so what I would imagine being a diver is that I would get up underneath the bed and swim around and act like that I was underneath the water because I had a bit overactive imagination. My mom was about 6 months pregnant. We're watching television. I'm underneath the bed. She's sitting on it. I get my head stuck underneath the frame. And so she's got to lift the bed off my big head. And she winds up breaking her water. And my brother was born prematurely because of my big head being underneath because my mom had to lift the bed off my head. So that's the type of person I am. I'm so into adventures. I got myself into so much trouble just because of my overactive imagination.
Oh, that's so funny. And that's why you named your business Exodus Adventures.
That's correct. So if it's not adventurous, I'm not really into it. So yes, that is exactly correct.
Oh, that's so funny. And are you like, where's your brother located?
Okay, so I've got two younger brothers that from my mom and my dad. I've got my brother, he lives in Dallas in a little town called Euless. He's 4 years younger than me. And then my youngest brother, who's 8 years younger than me, he's a truck driver. He's based out of Houston, Texas, but he travels all across the United States. And we keep in touch and talk. My mom and dad are still alive. They're divorced and remarried. And my dad lives in Colorado, and my mom lives in Texas, close to my middle brother. Euless. So yeah,
that's super cool. And so like, what was it like with your dad being in the Vietnam War?
So my dad was a forward observer. So he was part of a platoon that was all African Americans, and unfortunately during that time it was a rough go at the Frankfurt base. In fact, it was because of my dad that he called the NAACP to do an investigation on the racism that was there on base, and you can look it up. It's on Google. About it was the first major investigation of racism, just because his platoon, all of them died except him, because the commander of the of the fort per se at Frankfurt there was racist and put them in harm's way, and he wound up living to tell the tale and having them investigated. He was blackballed out of the army and was very bitter after that, and he became so bitter and enraged and angry at his treatment that he didn't trust white people at all. And I grew up hearing him and his anger toward white people, and his disappointment, his opportunities to be able to provide for his family like he wanted to, very frustrating and very angry, and was not able to work through the process of forgiveness and letting go of the wrongs that happened to him.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
What was that like as it formed your young life, and you ended up going into the Air Force, and like what was your experience with that and moving into the Air Force?
So my dad's anger toward white people was something that he taught us not to be trustful of them, and yet I was in school with a lot of white people, so it wasn't always congruent as far as how I lived, because I would observe them, see how they would be. Were there some that were racist when I was growing up in Texas? Yes. Were they all like that? No. And so I had a chance, an opportunity to see for myself and understand that not everyone fit my dad's mold or understanding. And so I started coming up with my own understanding of what I needed to do in order to grow, in order to make friends, in order to keep myself safe. With how I treated people, or how I watched people, or how I dealt with people. And so growing up, I lived all over Texas, I spent 17 years in Texas, except 1 year in North Carolina. And I went to school with, my high school year was Andy Pettit of the New York Yankees. I went to school with him. He was in my graduating class. He was at the Astros for a little bit. Good guy, treated me fairly. And I spent a lot of time with the ethnic kids, all the Latinos, Asian kids, with a couple of the African-American kids. And so we all hung out. I had some friends that were Caucasian, and I was the type of person that I just loved to have fun, go on adventures. And with all the stuff that was going on at home, I tried to look for comedy or adventures to pour my energy into. And it wasn't until my senior year of high school, because I was trying to figure out what I was going to do for college, that we had career day. And career day, we had the military come in. And we had the Marine Corps, we had the Army, and the Air Force. Navy didn't show up, which for whatever reason, they just didn't show up.
They were out to sea.
Yeah, evidently so. So they sent the next best thing, which was the Marine Corps. Marine Corps recruiter was really cool, had a bunch of medals and stuff like that, and told me, you should join the Marine Corps because you'll be able to travel. And I wanted to travel at that time because I wanted to leave and see the world and be like Jacques Cousteau and all my other heroes at the time that I was watching on television and documentaries and stuff like that. And then I called my cousins, which are about a couple years older than me, because they had gone into the Marine Corps. And I asked them, so what do you think? And they were like, don't do it. Don't do it, because they were stationed down in Guatemala, and they saw a lot of they were not so happy to be dealing with. And so I was like, okay. Then the Army recruiter bought me sandwiches and food to try and sign me up to join the Army. And my mom was like, you are not joining the Army. From her experience with my dad and everything else. She's
and
like,
her dad.
And she's like, no, that's not happening. So I left the Air Force guy, and he was cool. I liked him. He was like, look, you can join us if you want. You don't have to. I'm not going to pursue you or anything like that. I'm not
going to buy you sandwiches.
Yeah, he wasn't going to do any of that kind of stuff. He was really cool. And so he said, but I'd like to ask you if you wouldn't mind coming to MEP station and take a test. And I was like, okay, sure. So what I didn't know at that time was the language test to see my proficiency as far as languages. And I didn't finish it, so I thought I failed. But he came back to me and he said, you had the highest score of anybody that we've ever had on the test.
Wow, that's so cool.
It was 1989 that happened. And so we talked with my mom, and I wound up going in at 17 years of age because my mom signed me away. It was a delayed enlistment program. And so I was promised this job to become a Russian linguist at the time. It's called a Russian cryptological linguist. So
So awesome.
it was about 2 years of training and language school and stuff like that, survival school, and then I would be stationed overseas. And so I was like, well, sure, I'll go for that. And little did I know that that was going to be the greatest adventure of all, because I wound up graduating at the end of May of 1990, and 2 weeks later, I'm on a plane heading to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. So my summertime was short-lived, and then that started my Air Force career for 8 years. I learned Russian in Monterey, California, most beautiful place I'd ever been to in my life. It was awesome, loved it. Had some adventures out in
Sure you did. It's a fun place.
lots and lots of adventures. Oh yes. Then after a year of learning Russian, I wound up going back to tech school in Texas, on the western part of Texas, at a base there where I had to get my security clearance and things like that. And that was interesting, learning how to do my military job, learning the language and stuff like that. So I can't go into detail. All I can say is that there were long days, lots of understanding Russian terminology for military things, and then doing a lot of interesting work at that time.
Top secret.
Top secret stuff. So I was there for a while because I had moved all over the place, and they had to do my background check so I could get my top secret security clearance. And then after that, I went to survival school in Spokane, Washington, and that was like my rite of passage, because I had to go through how to survive if my plane crashed in the water, how to survive if we lost pressure in the plane. We would simulate 30,000 feet and what happens when you get hypoxia and stuff like that. That was crazy. And then I had to learn how to survive on land, and then evade being captured, and go to POW training, where I was actually simulated for interrogations and torture and all that kind of stuff. And it was probably the best 6 weeks of my life, that I had to learn how to not only become a man, but become a young man that was capable of being able to take care of myself. And it was from there that it really encouraged me to encourage people to live a life of fitness and wellness, because you never know what'll come up in your life. It was the beginnings of Exodus Adventures there in survival school. So after I graduated there, I went to Okinawa, Japan for 2 years. Met the love of my life at that time. We got married there in Okinawa, Japan. Wound up raising 6 kids.
A lot of kids.
Yeah, a lot of kids, 5 girls, 1 boy. So I needed girls in my life because I was so much machismo, testosterone. I was just all about that. And when I had girls in my life, it helped to soften that a bit, to be more sensitive and caring as much as I could growing up. So was in Okinawa, Japan for 2 years, got married, went back to Monterey to learn Chinese, went back to Texas to learn my tech school stuff, then went to Maryland and worked at NSA for a couple of years and learned quite a bit. I was there during the time where Hong Kong switched over from English rule to Chinese rule. And it was the most amazing historical thing that happened. So that was a powerful time in my life. And then from there, I lived in Maryland for 11 years, working and doing odd jobs. The transition, though, from military life to civilian life was a rough one, though. That was probably a very significant time in my life where we were homeless. I had a kid, 2 years old, another kid on the way, and trying to figure out our lives was just rough. So stayed with family, wound up selling cars for Saturn for 9 months. That was fun. And then wound up going to work for Yellow Page Advertising. You'll like this story. This is a good one. It was during the time of the Bell Atlantics, and they were all over the United States, different areas, Southwest, Central, North, the Bell Atlantics at that time. So I was selling Yellow Page Advertising on the phone, calling people, blah, blah, blah. It was getting old. I didn't want to be around it. And then toward the end of my time there, they brought us all in for a meeting saying that they were going to bring in all the Bell Atlantics to form this one gigantic company. And we're like, okay, so what's the name of the company going to be? And they were like, okay, are you ready for this? Verizon. And we were all at the time going, what kind of name is that? Verizon? Who's going to want to do a company named Verizon? That's such a stupid name. Who's going to want to work? What? Oh, whatever. And so I wound up leaving the company not that long after that. And little did I know that I should have like invested and kept a 401k in that, because obviously
Verizon is agile.
they've done well for themselves. Okay.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
So yeah, that was good. But it was good because I transitioned out of corporate America because I realized it wasn't for me.
Right.
So I was going into fitness and wellness, becoming a boot camp instructor for morning boot camps from 6 to 7 in the morning, Monday through Friday. I yelled at people. I told them to do fitness exercises. I yelled at CEOs. I yelled at small business owners. I yelled at moms. I yelled at dads. It didn't matter. I just yelled at them. And we ran and we exercised and had a great time. So that was fun for me. So I did that, and then part-time I worked at a climbing gym called Earth Treks at the time in Maryland. And what's funny, another funny story, is that the owner, his name is Chris Warner, and he wound up being a part of the highest emergency rescue in Everest history because he was a mountain guide too. And he was doing a documentary with Discovery Channel at the time, and they were trying to summit, and there was a bottleneck, and there was the Japanese team, I want to say, they were trying to make it push toward the summit. One of their guys was having problems breathing and wound up getting, they call it edema, where they start bleeding from the brain. And so and he would have died up there because there's no way that you can rescue that person up there. But they wound up getting a helicopter to get up there, and he sat with the guy, gave him oxygen to keep him alive until the helicopter came. And so we were getting all this through sat phones and stuff like that. So that was my life, getting into rock climbing, getting into mountain biking, getting into whitewater kayaking, sea kayaking, and getting people in shape so they could do that. So from 2001, 2002, I started my fitness business, wellness business, to get people in shape so they could live life as an adventure. And I had been doing that ever since. So I did that out there for Maryland for a number of years before joining an organization called North Bay, where it was a $33 million facility that was an adventure camp / environmental education camp for inner city kids from Baltimore. And kids from all over Maryland came to learn environmental education. And I did their ropes course, climbing wall, and zip line. So that was a fun few years for me before relocating to Colorado.
Oh, that's great. We'll have to make sure and put like the link to that place so everybody can go there, because that place sounds amazing.
Yeah, the North Bay is phenomenal. We had a great time. During the day, we did environmental education. We talked about character for the kids. And then in the evening time, we put on a show where I was on stage and I was part of a character duo for environmental education and for science and for adventure. So
nice.
Yeah, it was good. It was really good. Got my acting chops there, and then wound up relocating to Colorado. And how I wound up going to Colorado was that I was asked to drive a pink RV bus for breast cancer survivors for a 13-city tour.
What?
From the East Coast to the West Coast. And the person's name is AJ Ali, who, by the way, is a mover and a shaker, who is a producer, an actor, who is currently promoting reconciliation among communities and the police right now, who's doing a great job.
That's awesome.
Him and his wife, who had survived breast cancer. And it was called Survivor Series. And we had a great time. An African-American man driving a pink bus. It was great for my psyche and my masculinity at the time. So it was awesome. Lots and lots of fun with that.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And then you came to Colorado.
I did. I came to Colorado. It was the summer of 2007 that my wife at the time and I went to Durango, hung out there. Felt like the timing was right for me to relocate there. And then at the end of 2007, we moved to Durango, Colorado, and spent 4 years there because her family homesteaded there, and nice. Wound up getting adjusted to Colorado life because the East Coast and Colorado life are two totally opposite things.
They
And so
definitely are. I love Durango. I've been there a few different times. It's one of my favorite places. But yes, it is very different from New York, for instance.
the East Coast and
Just the East
Colorado,
Coast in general.
completely two different animals. So it was a good learning curve for me. Then while I was there, I did odd jobs here and there. It just wasn't really sinking while I was there because it's more of a tourist town and there wasn't a whole lot of industry stuff there.
Yeah, and I'm curious, it's kind of an interesting mix of liberal and conservative, I feel like,
Yeah.
in that town. Did you find that like there was more racism there that you experienced?
I felt more, Elysia, that it wasn't just racism. It was more like being prejudiced about my beliefs because at the time I was very open about my faith as being a Christian, and there were times when if I shared that or said that people would uh, would would not treat me well, and I had to learn
Fascinating.
how to just navigate around that. A lot of times I made a lot of friends, I had a lot of connections, but as far as inroads to business and work wise, very very prejudiced against that, very prejudiced against
Hmm.
that. And
I
then
would not have
being,
thought that about that town.
being an African American man at that time who's articulate and smart, that dealt with people that had certain insecurities, it was interesting to find work or to do or deal with people. Or it was an odd mix, and it wasn't until toward the end of my time there that I wound up being part of the Leadership La Plata, which is a think tank for leaders, where it's an organization held by the Chamber of Commerce to identify certain leaders in the community and bring them up to do greater things. And so I was able to go through that process. It's a 2-year process. First 9 months, you go through classes, learning about education, local government, business, the arts. You learn about all types of things. And it was one of the most amazing things that I ever had a chance to do. And
That's
then
fantastic. We'll have to make sure that we put a link in there for people in their communities if they can try and find something like that for themselves in the Chamber of Commerce.
yeah, exactly. It was a phenomenal time for me to grow and learn, and that's where I learned a lot about police and how they deal with issues, which helped me to get involved more on the local level. So, I mean, what I mean by that is this: within each community, you have a police department, and back in the day, there used to be a cop that was on the beat that you would know, and they would know the community. And then,
Right.
and then, as the years have gone by and unrest and things like that, that separated, and so there wasn't like a real liaison with the police department in the communities, and so they started separating more and more. And so for me, when I went through that leadership class and spent time at the police department and got a chance to know and befriended some policemen that I didn't really completely understand the amount of pressure and troubles and tribulations that they go through with dealing with domestic violence and abuse and robberies and all the things in the world that we as normal civilians and citizens don't deal with, they have to deal with ongoing. And so it helped me to make sure that wherever I was going to live, as far as the community, that I get a chance to know the police, and that I not only pray for them and support them, but let them know that there are members out there that care. And that helped me to bridge the gap between the good cops and the ones that weren't so good, and to have a healthy respect for them and not blame all of them for the actions of a few. And so the leadership class was opened up doors for me. And it was during that time that I was in that class that I was asked to be a part of the show One Man Army for the Discovery Channel.
That's
So
so
that's how.
awesome.
So yeah, it was end of my time in Durango, getting ready to figure out where I was going to relocate. I was looking at work for Craigslist, came across the TV section for tryouts in London, of all places. And I checked it out, clicked the link, answered it, said, hey, I'm a linguist. I was in the Air Force, did survival school. Tell me what you want. Because at the time, it was just like this show that they're looking for people. And I was like, yeah,
Right.
And then immediately they email me back, tell me that they're in Burbank, California, and that they want to learn all about me. And so that was
That's so awesome.
cool. It was so cool. So it was at the end of 2010. It was in the like November 2010. I reached out to them, and it wasn't until April of 2011 that they're like, after like signing my life away, well, I wasn't going to say anything. I wasn't going to do anything. Blah blah blah. Image, all that kind of stuff. That they're like, hey Kalvin, we had somebody bow out, be able to come get the recording for the show. Can you go in their stead? And I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that. So in April of 2011, they fly me out to Burbank, California, and I wound up meeting Michael Hawk of Man, Woman, Wild. We're still friends today. We still talk.
That's so cool.
I meet 3 other guys that 2 were in the Marine Corps. One was a Chicago police guy, and we go head to head in these events where I'm submerged in a plexiglass coffin with a blowhole at one end and bars at the other end. I got to saw my way out of 50-degree water. That's the first event. Second event is that I got to go up and under and over 8-foot fences carrying an 80-pound pack and be the first to finish. And then the last one is that I'm hung upside down. I got to open up some safes, break into the safes, put together a Smith & Wesson and shoot myself free. So yeah, that was the show, One Man Army. And for those, it was cool. It was good. It was one of the best adventures I've ever had. So
I love talking to Kalvin. He has the best stories. He's like one of my new favorite people. Every time I talk to him, I'm just like, Kalvin, what are you doing?
I tend to get into quite a bit.
It's so fun. That's why we're such good friends. I love it.
And if you want to see the episode, it's on my website, so I'll make sure that you have a link to that. So
yes, fantastic. Good. I love it. Yeah, so you've done all these amazing things, and on top of all of those epic things that you've done, you also fostered a bunch of kids, right?
Yeah, I did foster care for a couple of years, and it was after we left Durango, we moved up to a little town called Paonia near Grand Junction, Colorado, and it's in this area, it's Delta County, where it's the highest concentration of organic farmers and ranchers in the state, and it may be in the United States because there's so many of them here that we grow all types of fruits and vegetables and stuff like that, and it's so good because we learn about that. And then a number of years in, we had been talking about doing foster care kids. This is with 6 kids, okay? And so we were talking about foster care, and we were thinking about adoption. We were thinking about, adding more kids to the family. And then we went through the process of foster care and wound up getting a sibling group of 4 for 2 years. And it was, how can I say this? Foster care is probably the most rewarding and most difficult thing to ever do. It was rewarding because you knew you were giving to kids, but it was most difficult because you had to work with state red tape. You had to do so many things, and the kids were so broken and hurt that we weren't given the support that we needed, and we kept the kids longer than we should have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just because like your hearts were so big and you just wanted to keep giving to them, but like, and then you had your own kids' personalities matching with them, and like interpersonal struggles within the family, I imagine. And
so that was exactly, all of that mix in there, and it wound up kids going back to the state, and then afterwards my family wound up being affected adversely by that, with resentment for us parents getting the kids, and then resentment between me and my wife at the time, and then we wound up getting a divorce shortly after that, which was sad for all of us involved. And that whole process was a very difficult one, just because of ground rules, and that's why I wanted to give the talk at the Men's Summit, because of my process through divorce and the effects of divorce and how difficult it is, and for the importance of not putting down the other partner or former spouse, and showing care and love and support to the kids in the transition, and not pitting them against one parent or the other. Extremely important, to the point where
Yeah.
I had to learn about fathers' rights and the importance of how to stand when things are unjust or unright or being labeled a certain way, uh, as you're trying to navigate the process of divorce, how to build your family, how to rebuild trust and relationships, and all that comes with it. The moment that I was introduced to Elysia about this men's summit and what she asked, that was on my heart, and at the time, just making sure that dads would be represented, again, as far as being the importance of being in a relationship with their kids and the importance of a family, that the dads, how important they are. Uh,
Yeah.
which circled around for me of um, how my dad probably felt when my parents got divorced, and the anger that he had that kept building from the situations that happened to him in the military, and then when he got out, and all the things that he had to face and how he had to deal with it. How now I'm in the same space almost, and checking myself to make sure that I don't go to that dark place and not learn how to forgive and let go of things that have happened to me. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a challenging place, but a rewarding way, because I know who I am, I know what I stand for, and that there are answers for those that are probably going through a system that's unjust and unfair and being labeled a certain way, but there's still hope.
Yes.
So I wanted to make sure to be able to share that and encourage other men that have gone through something similar, or maybe at the beginning of it, maybe in the middle of it, maybe post afterwards, and trying to reconcile with their kids, that there's hope, and that you just got to keep working. Don't give up.
Thank you so much for that message, Kalvin. I really appreciate everything that you're doing and how you're wanting to step forward and support men in that. And can men contact you if they have questions or just looking for support in that process, or like ways, like if you can direct them to different supports?
Yes. Please contact me, because I think the most important thing is that to know that men should know that they're not alone. I think within our community, and what I'm realizing, that it's universal all around the world, is that sometimes men are tasked with the position that they should be strong and they need to deal with their problems and issues on their own, and that they are alone. And that's not the case. That's not healthy, and it's not supportive. You need to find other men that will help raise you up, keep you accountable, strengthen you, encourage you, and not try and tear you down. And you can't do it alone. You're not meant to do it alone. You're meant to have support. And so to find men that you can trust to be vulnerable with and transparent, connect with me, form your own groups. I can encourage you on how to do that. And that there are organizations that are out there that are helping to support men, and which I'm really proud of Elysia for opening up and interviewing me, is that there are women that are out there that get it, that are seeing the damage of feminism. They're seeing the damage of the Me Too movement. They're seeing the damage that has been done to men, and they're looking for ways to be able to not only rectify that, but to give a voice and a platform for that. And so it's out there. Don't give up. And again, I just thank you, Elysia, for opening up that platform to be able to do so and to be able to speak on these things.
You're very welcome, my friend. And I think I'll just add a clarifier in there too, because I feel like where you're coming from, and you can let me know if I'm wrong in this, is that it's not that the Me Too movement or that feminism is wrong, but just like any movement, that there are sometimes negative impacts by how people are embodying those movements.
Right. I think that the feminism and Me Too movement started off great, but if the part of it where they were using it to be able to have a voice, because theirs was drowned out, that you don't use that same platform to drown out other voices in the process as you're trying to find your voice. That's for more clarification. That yes,
Yeah.
you don't create a platform to do the same thing that was done to you. that's
Right.
the that's
Right. Because exactly. And I'm glad that you said that, because it is so incredibly important. And just like when we're creating the men's summit, it's not that we're trying to tell other people that that women's experience is invalid. Like the men's summit is merely about creating an opportunity for men to talk about things that they're struggling with in a supportive, like non-judgmental container, and be able to held accountable without shame or invalidation, so that they can explore the things that they've been struggling with, so that they can lean into a community and have a greater opportunity to heal. And that's all that we're doing over here, is getting support to people that seem to be struggling to find support or find understanding with the different things that they're going through.
Right. And not create another movement where we shut down and start the cycle all over again.
Right,
But,
exactly. No, we don't want to shut down. We want to we want to explore emotional intelligence in men. And you and I have spoken before on the important parts in regards to men and how they can healthfully express their anger,
right.
and be a quote unquote dangerous man. Like, for instance, like military men are trained to do different, activities of war,
Right.
to be efficient and effective in that, and then coming back and like being with their partners. And how can you know how to do those things, but also be able to communicate healthily with your partners, with your friends, and have healthy boundaries and
Right.
find proper outlets for anger, because there's nothing wrong with anger as an emotion. It's really important for people to know that it's just part of our experience in life as humans. It's how we direct that emotion, how we manage it, transmute it, that is important and necessary to create functional aspects of it.
Functional aspects, as well as deal with trauma, because sometimes through trauma, the reactions to trauma creates more trauma, and the issue that needed to be dealt with is exacerbated by the fact that there isn't healing or true safety to be able to walk or work through that process. And spending time with my dad and realizing his life and how that affected him and us is the reason why I do what I do today, where I work with an organization called Project Sanctuary, and we do 6-day therapeutic retreats for military members and their families. And so we have sponsors and funders that pay for these families to come do these amazing retreats in different locations around the United States.
Awesome.
And they just have to get there and get home, but it's paid for. There's food, there's activities, and there's classes that deal with PTG, post-traumatic growth, instead of post-traumatic stress.
I love that. I've just been hearing that more about the post-traumatic growth instead of post-traumatic stress. It's only in the last couple of weeks have I been for the first time, which is great for mindset and us being able to transcend spaces. And the work that you're doing with that project, it's with horses, correct? So you're starting to bring in more experiences with horses.
Well, what's happening is that it's a different myriad of things of where there's cooperation between organizations. So Project Sanctuary allows horseback riding, and we have therapists that are there, or counselors, I should say, that work with us that have their own equine therapy organization.
Nice.
Michelle Kay of Operation Equine works with first responders and veterans to use horses to be able to help work through trauma and communication. And so what's really great is that each of us that works with this organization have other connections to be able to help support our military members and first responders, which is phenomenal. So that way there's a chain of resources that can help them find wholeness again.
Which is so fantastic. And then have you found any of, do you have any profound stories of what you've seen with families or veterans in regards to the horses?
The trick is trying to find one, because there's so many. I've got one. I've got a good one. It's a Vietnam vet. I wish my dad would be able to do this. Crusty old Vietnam vet who was with Operation Equine, and he's not in a therapist. He'd been with the VA for years, hadn't gotten the help that he needed, was washed over, not helped or supported, just hated it. And he was given an opportunity to come to an equine therapy workshop. And he told the therapist, he's like, look, I'm not here to talk. I'm not here to do anything. I'm just here, okay? And what's amazing is that she said, that's just fine. Well, I've got an idea. Why don't you just go hang out with that horse over there, okay? Come back. Let me know how you're doing. Just left him alone. So he decides to walk over, just hang out, didn't say a whole lot. And then finally, the horse comes over and just hangs out with him. Just sits there. And he's like, huh, okay. So he starts to talk to this horse and ask the horse questions and just basically have a conversation, and winds up spilling his guts in terms of the pain and the sorrows and the trauma, just because there was a horse that was there that was just being there. It wasn't judging, wasn't saying that you're wrong, wasn't anything. It just knew that he needed someone there.
Yeah.
And so it just hung out. And so he said he had the best therapy there because he just spilled his guts. He hadn't had told anyone the things that he had gone through. And so he came back to the therapist, and you know what he said? He said, thank you. Thank you for letting me be able to hang out and do this for the day. And has become a great friend of the organization and of that therapist to this day.
Fantastic.
Regards to the ability that horses have to be present with a person and not be judgmental, and that they reflect how the needs of an individual. So if you're going to be pretentious, horse doesn't want to have anything to do with you. If you want to be authentic and real and vulnerable and hurt and pain, a horse will be there and want to spend time with you, which was just powerful and fascinating. So yeah, good stuff. I love it. In fact, all the things that I go through and have gone through, I would have to say that equine therapy is probably one of the most active and kinesthetic type of counseling that I truly enjoy.
Fantastic feedback. Thank you so much. And I'm really glad that you've had the opportunity to connect with the horses, and then you get to connect with some of the horses at the Judge Brown Eyes' Mustang rescue down there, right?
Yes, most definitely. In fact, I have a few pictures with some of the horses, with some of the Mustangs. That was so cool. Spending time with George and the Mustangs. I mean, just hanging out with those Mustangs is just awesome, because it's just like raw power. And you understand why the Ford Mustang is such an awesome car, because it is. I mean, out of all the Fords, I mean, it is. I mean, the Shelbys, I mean, it's awesome. I had a friend that grew up with a Mustang. He had an 89 LX 5.0, and that car was fast. And so, yeah, it was a lot of respect. That if there's anything, Ford makes good truck and they make good Mustangs. So I'll give them that.
Oh, that's so funny. There's a car that's a hybrid electric called the Elysia Buss, and it is modeled after the original Mustang. But it's really expensive, but if anyone loves fast cars that are super sexy, that you should definitely look up the Elysia Buss.
I will look that up. Elysia Buss then. Okay.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, I want to do a plug for this gentleman by the name of Resmaa Menakem.
Okay.
Resmaa Menakem is, I was just introduced to him recently, is a person that does deep study on trauma work and how to find answers to that. And he wrote a book called My Grandmother's Hands, and it's called Racialized Trauma and the Pathway to Mending Our Hearts and Bodies by Resmaa Menakem. And his website is resmaamenakem, and that's ResmaaMenakem.com. At least that's what I think. If it's not, I'll make sure that I get the right link.
I'll put the link in the description for the YouTube video.
His work is phenomenal, and he does something about trauma and how it's passed down generationally, and not just generationally, but also within different ethnicities that's passed down. And he talks about how to find healing and support within that. Fascinating work, and it's affected me to the point where I am doing the work myself and dealing with not just generational stuff, but again, in line with what's going on with my dad and with his father before him and things like that, and how to stop that from continuing down the road. So that's where I'm at currently, as far as doing
beautiful.
the work.
Yeah,
So,
thank you for sharing. Yeah, you're welcome. I've heard amazing things about that book from multiple sources. Yeah, just people all over the place. I think that book is amazing. So I'm really glad that you brought it forward, and I need to read that book. It's on my list, and yeah, it's great work. So Kalvin, it's been incredible getting to talk to you today and getting to learn more about your story. And I have two questions before we wrap up for today.
Right.
One, can you share a story about how your adventure programs and retreats help families?
Mm.
Like sharing a story, how
Oh,
that pulls them
um,
together and they're able to transcend their difficulties.
I think the most interesting and powerful thing that I see that the retreats that I'm a part of and able to host, and the feedback that I've gotten, because I've done about 31 retreats so far over the last few years, and the
A lot of retreats.
constant feedback that I get is the fact that I'm a calming presence. So I'm not there, I'm not giving off like high energy in terms of like stress. I'm not amped up to the point where um, it puts the families on edge. It's like a calming presence, and that they feel that they can relax and that they can be themselves. And the environment that I want to create for them is an area of safety and trust, and letting them know that we're here for you and we got your back and we understand. And if that gives them the peace that they need in order to take in all the support and resources to be able to leave that place with more hope than what they came with, then I've done my job. And
That's
so
really beautiful.
that's the um, that's what I see, and being able to encourage them to follow their dreams and goals, because that's really big in my life. Um, yeah, I had the opportunity to do a bucket list item by speaking at a TEDx event, and that was in the midst of me and my life, when my life was falling apart, that opportunity was given to me, um, and it was one of the most powerful things I could ever be a part of. And so through that experience, to encourage other people that are going through their own situation and scenario, that there's always an opportunity for you to rise up and to be able to help others, even in the midst of what you're going through. So yeah, it was a very powerful moment for me. So that was the first question. What you got for your second?
So my second question is, who inspires you?
Who inspires me? Huh. I've had different people over my life at different times in my life inspire me, from family and friends. Uh, Recently, Resma Menachem inspires me. A lady by the name of Lisa Nichols,
Okay.
who has the only, I think she has the only, what is it, encouraging, what is it? She's a motivational speaker, motivational company that's on the stock exchange. I think hers is the only one for right now.
Fascinating.
And she has a powerful story of her life, of where she was raising her son as a single mom, how she used her grandmother's encouragement to change her thinking. She went through classes in terms of motivational and encouragement and success, took him to the point where she made it a point to change her mindset, became this powerful and dynamic motivational speaker, created a company to help others, and she has taken names and changing lives. And
Awesome.
she has been an amazing inspiration, especially her interview about success and her interview about battling with health and wellness. It's just been awesome. That's real world. Spiritually speaking, in the midst of a world and a nation that has has difficulty with the church, or with people that have been in church, or those that have been spiritual, or those that have believed in Christianity, I still have hope, and want to follow the teachings of Jesus, not just historically, but as a person living in a world that is postmodern, and wants to believe that um, our world ends and begins with us. Uh, Final thing, when I was in Okinawa, Japan, I was struck with the the respect that the Asian culture, the Japanese culture has for spiritual things. I was struck that as an American, that our nation has lost sight of those things that are not seen or heard or supernatural, and the lack of respect that we have towards that, and was shamed, not in a bad way, but in a good way, to be reminded that in our world, there are countries that have been around for thousands of years that have more respect for the spiritual world than we do. And that keeps me humble, and encourages me to not think that I have it all together, and it's okay. So that's what I'm sticking with. So that's where I'm at.
You're sticking with grace.
Yes, lots of it. Lots of it.
And that's a really beautiful place to get to be. An open mind and an open heart, and grace for all of the process between.
Yes, most definitely.
Well,
and adventures.
And what?
And adventures, because you can't have a life without adventure. I mean, come on.
No, it's true. It's true. I'm a big advocate for adventure. In my I always joke that I have like gypsy in my blood. It's hard for me to stay in one place for too long. I'm about to get on the road here in another like 2 to 3 weeks. So let's start another adventure. So we're kindred spirits, my dear friend.
Nice.
So Kalvin, thank you so much for being on the show today. I so appreciate you and everything that you are bringing to the world, and the dedication you had to just transcend your own experiences and just always grow. I have so much like respect and admiration for you as a human being on this planet. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you very much, Elysia, for the opportunity to share your friendship, your care, support. I am blessed to know you. Thank you for what you're doing, and for connecting me with some amazing men. Thank you. I'm really excited for this.
You are so welcome. Yeah, it's definitely been a gift to connect with all the gentlemen that we have on the summit, and just the opportunity all the time. I feel like I've been having to connect with more and more amazing men and women around the planet right now. It's just every day, just so much gratitude.
Nice.
So, yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, everybody out there, thank you so much for watching again, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Until next time, bye.
Bye.